In computer science, white space is any character, a series of characters that represent horizontal or vertical space in typography. When rendered, a white space character does not correspond to a visible mark, but typically does occupy an area on a page. For example, the common white space symbol U+0020 SPACE, also ASCII 32, represents a blank space punctuation character in text, used as a word divider in Western scripts. Overview. With many keyboard layouts, a horizontal white space character may be entered through the use of a spacebar. Horizontal white space may also be entered on many keyboards through the use of the tab key, although the length of the space may vary. Vertical white space is a bit more varied as to how it is encoded, but the most obvious in typing is the enter result, which creates a new line code sequence in applications programs. Older keyboards might instead say return, abbreviating the typewriter keyboard meaning carriage return, which generated an electromechanical return to the left stop and a line feed or move to the next line. In some applications, these were independently used to draw text cell-based displays on monitors or for printing on tractor-guided printers, which might also contain reverse motions, positioning code sequences allowing yesterday's text-based fancier displays. Many early computer games used such codes to draw a screen. The term white space is based on the resulting appearance on ordinary paper. However, they are coded inside an application. White space can be processed the same as any other character code, and programs can do the proper action as defined for the context in which they occur. Definition and ambiguity. The most common white space characters may be typed via the space bar or the tab key. Depending on context, a line break generated by the return or enter key may be considered white space as well. Unicode. The table below lists the 25 characters defined as white space characters in the Unicode character database. 17 use a definition of white space consistent with the algorithm for bidirectional writing and are known as BIDI-WS characters. The remaining characters may also be used, but are not of this BIDI type. Note, depending on the browser and fonts used to view to the following table, not all spaces may be displayed properly. Substitutes. Unicode also provides some visible characters that can be used to represent white space. Non-space blanks. The Braille patterns Unicode block contains U+0020 Braille pattern blank, a Braille pattern with no dots raised. Some fonts display the character as a fixed width blank. However, the Unicode standard explicitly states that it does not act as a space. White space and digital typography. On-screen display. Text editors, word processors, and desktop publishing software differ in how they represent white space on the screen, and how they represent spaces at the ends of lines longer than the screen column width. In some cases, spaces are shown simply as blank space. In other cases, they may be represented by an interpunct or other symbols. Many different characters could be used to produce spaces, and non-character functions can also affect white space. Variable width. General-purpose space. In computer character encodings, there is a normal general-purpose space whose width will vary according to the design of the typeface. Typical values range from 1/5 m to 1/3 m. Sophisticated fonts may have differently sized spaces for bold, italic, and small caps faces, and often compositors will manually adjust the width of the space depending on the size and prominence of the text. In addition to this general-purpose space, it is possible to encode a space of a specific width. See the table below for a complete list. Breaking and non-breaking spaces. By default, computer programs usually assume that, in text with word wrap enabled, a line break may as necessary be inserted at the position of a space. The non-breaking space U+0020 named entity, and AMP_NBSP is intended to render the same as the normal space but prevents line wrapping at that position. Hard spaces may be defined by some word processors and operating systems as either a non-breaking space, a non-combining, non-expanding space, or some other special character. Hair spaces around dashes, M-dashes used as parenthetical dividers, and N-dashes when used as word joiners, are usually set continuous with the text. However, such a dash can optionally be surrounded with a hair space U+200A or thin space U+2009. The hair space can be written in HTML by using the numeric character references and AMP #X200 or in AMP number 8202, or the named entity in AMP hairs P, but is not universally supported in browsers yet. As of 2016, the thin space is named entity in AMP thinsp and numeric references and AMP #X2009 or and AMP number 8201. These spaces are much thinner than a normal space font, with the hair space being the thinner of the two. Computing applications. Programming languages. In programming language syntax, spaces are frequently used to explicitly separate tokens, runs of whitespace characters occurring within source code written in computer programming languages are ignored by most languages. Such languages are called free-form. In a few languages, including Haskell, Occam, ABC, and Python, whitespace and indentation are used for syntactical purposes. In the satirical language called whitespace, whitespace characters are the only valid characters for programming, while any other characters are ignored. Still, for most programming languages, excessive use of whitespace, especially trailing whitespace at the end of lines, is considered a nuisance. However, correct use of whitespace can make the code easier to read and help group related logic. The C language defines whitespace characters to be space, horizontal tab, new line, vertical tab, and form feed. The HTTP network protocol requires different types of whitespace to be used in different parts of the protocol, such as only the space character in the status line, CRLF at the end of a line, and linear whitespace in header values. Command line user interfaces. In commands processed by command processors, e.g. in scripts and typed in, the space character can cause problems as it has two possible functions, as part of a command parameter or as a parameter name separator. Ambiguity can be prevented either by prohibiting embedded spaces or by enclosing a name with embedded spaces between quote characters. Markup languages. Some markup languages, such as SGML, preserve whitespace as written. Web markup languages such as XML and HTML treat whitespace characters specially, including space characters, for programmers' convenience. One or more space characters read by conforming display time processors of those markup languages are collapsed to 0 or 1 space, depending on the semantic context. For example, double spaces within text collapsed to a single space, and spaces which appear on either side of the equals that separates an attribute name from its value have no effect on the interpretation of the document. Element and tags can contain trailing spaces, and empty element tags in XML can contain spaces before the and GT. In these languages, unnecessary whitespace increases the file size, and so may slow network transfers. On the other hand, unnecessary whitespace can also inconspicuously mark code, similar to, but less obvious than comments in code. This can be desirable to prove an infringement of license or copyright that was committed by copying and pasting. In XML attribute values, sequences of whitespace characters are treated as a single space when the document is read by a parser. Whitespace in XML element content is not changed in this way by the parser, but an application receiving information from the parser may choose to apply similar rules to element content. An XML document author can use the XML space equals preserve attribute on an element to instruct the parser to discourage the downstream application from altering whitespace in that element's content. In most HTML elements, a sequence of whitespace characters is treated as a single interword separator, which may manifest as a single space character when rendering text in a language that normally inserts such space between words. Conforming HTML renderers are required to apply a more literal treatment of whitespace within a few prescribed elements, such as the pre-tag and any element for which CSS has been used to apply pre-like whitespace processing. In such elements, space characters will not be collapsed into interword separators. In both XML and HTML, the non-breaking space character, along with other non-standard spaces, is not treated as collapsible whitespace, so it is not subject to the rules above. File names. Such usage is similar to multi-word file names written for operating systems and applications that are confused by embedded space codes. Such file names instead use an underscore as a word separator, as underscore in underscore this underscore phrase. Another such symbol was U+0020 blank symbol. This was used in the early years of computer programming when writing on coding forms. Key punch operators immediately recognized the symbol as an explicit space. It was used in BCDIC, EBCDIC, and ASCII 1963.